Contrast is a collaborative work, a podcast fully produced and hosted by the officers and residents of the Idaho Correctional Institution in Orofino.
Welcome back to Contrast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about ambient affection. Today on the panel, we have Joe. Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I am good.
Dave.
I'm Dave.
Dave, thank you. Deputy Warden Anderson.
Yes, hello.
All right, and Warden Carlin.
Hi.
You sounded very medicated right there.
I wish I was.
All right, so Warden Carlin usually doesn't take over the podcast, so today she's actually going to start us off.
Basically, what we want to talk about is, what does love mean to you? So as I look around the table, and we're not referring to love as in romantic love necessarily, but as we grow up, the culture around us and the people that are around us can help us define what love is to us. And I'm sure that my experience is much, much more different than what Dave's experience was. I had a very loving home growing up until my parents separated when I was 15. And so love for me at an early age was unconditional. There were no strings attached. I knew that I was loved by my parents because I was their child. And while there were a few things growing up that my mom kind of had a little bit of a traumatic past, but for the most part, I never doubted my worth. I didn't ever feel like I had to do anything to be loved by the people that surrounded me. So for me, love probably looks a lot different than it would for Dave. So Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
For me, growing up, love was really confusing. I'm still not quite sure if I can really grasp it. There was a lot of violence and a lot of trauma involved in my childhood, and but at the same time, I felt like my mother genuinely tried, but unfortunately.
So you felt like your mom genuinely loved you and did the best that she could in the environment that you were in.
Yes, but at the same time, there was so much other stuff going on that it took away from that. So
you probably also saw, and I'm just gonna delve into the ugliness. You probably also saw people that said they loved her, but their actions did not show what you, in your mind and your heart, knew what love was supposed to look like.
Right.
So you saw somebody emotionally abusing her, physically abusing her, and then love was when they would come back and beg for forgiveness, but then they would do it again.
Right.
And again.
I remember I had a stepdad, and he overheard me call my mother a bad name under my breath, and he got me in the kitchen, and he slapped the crap out of me, and then he lifted me up off the floor, and he said, "Now you know I love you, because if I didn't love you, I would have used a closed fist."
Oh.
And so it was confusing at the time, because it made sense, but then it didn't, at the same time.
Right.
So that was kind of my idea of love.
Mm-hmm.
That was the stick I measured love by.
Right.
And so as I grew older and I started having relationships of my own, I wasn't quite sure how to navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I still am.
Well, and sometimes we take those relationships that we learn from as young people, and because love to me can encompass more than just a parental relationship or a sibling relationship. It really goes to the people that personally I think that we work with every day. There is a sense of love and care. And then also your friends, of course. And I think that's the piece that, you know, we've got to kind of delve in and figure out, you know, how do people develop their philosophy of love? And so for you, growing up, you saw, like you said, a lot of violence and a lot of abuse. And then love was coming back and saying, I did that because I love you, because otherwise it would have been a closed fist. And so your child heart knows that that's not right, but you continue to see that behavior. And so that is when that's when your environment starts to kind of impede on what you know is to be true, and nature versus nurture. And so sometimes we take a lot of those experiences and they start to filter out into other relationships as well. A lot of people that come to prison, not everybody, but a lot of people have very similar traumas and drug abuse. Therefore, and Joe, you can speak to this because Dave and I just kind of took over, but I would assume that some of that impacts your ability to trust and develop friendships while you're incarcerated, because by then you've learned not to trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, trust is really hard for me. It's tough for me. Not only that, but seems like all throughout my life, I've had issues where I've trusted, and it's gone bad for me. And so, you know, I'm trying, but that's a tough one.
So let's talk about, so we can get everybody involved in this conversation. What are the different types of love that you can have in a pro-social society? And then, you know, compare that to a not so pro-social society. In other words, incarceration. So for me, obviously there's romantic love. There's what I would call agape love, which is just kind of a love for humanity, a respect for everything that God created. And then there's a love for your kids, if you have children, that is comparable to absolutely nothing. I never imagined. I mean, I love my spouse, but I never imagined before having kids that kind of a love. So that is definitely something separate from everything else. Yeah,
as you know, I lost my son last year in an accident, and until that moment, I didn't even realize there was a separate kind of love and a separate kind of pain that's involved in that. I had no idea, because I've lost people all my life. Death has been a huge part of my life. It seems like all my life I've gotten close to people and then I've lost them. But this one was different. This was crushing. It was. It's still crushing. And I'm seeing the board here real soon. And for 20 years, all I could think about was getting out and being there for my son. And I don't have that now. And it's devastating me. It's amazing how it's like a gift, this kind of this kind of special love for your children that's just separate from anything else, you know.
And from my experience, sorry, Joe, it's not just blood either, in my opinion, because I have a biological son, but I also have an adopted son, and there is no difference in the bond.
Oh yeah,
and the love, and so that is definitely one of the strongest that I can think of. Joe?
No, I wouldn't even fathom the feeling of losing my son. He just turned 10, and he's grown into such a young man that I having those talks with him, it makes me feel so good and grateful that I had this little person that looks up to me. And I never really had that growing up myself. Love wasn't really something that was spoke to me at my house or really anywhere. My mom, my dad, I don't think they loved themselves really. So for them to project any love towards me was almost impossible. But I had my siblings, and, I'm here for, for selling drugs and providing for my family in that way, because that was what I knew. And if I knew at the end of the day that they were okay and that I could provide for them, that was my love. That's what I was grown and shown, and I did it for many years. And with my son now, I can speak to him, and I've experienced a whole different type of love with him that I would never, ever show him that way. And so I strive to be the best person I can for him every day. And for you to lose yours, that's really sad, and I'm sorry,
I don't wish that on anybody. But, there's something beautiful that came out of it, too, is because I've learned that part of change is being able to put yourself in the shoes of those people that you've hurt in your life. And until you're really able to do that, it's difficult to really change. And I'm in here for murder, and so until I lost my child, I really couldn't understand the depth of the sorrow I've caused somebody else. And so it was like and this all came together within a few weeks of losing my son. And so it was like a gift from him. His death, it was like a final gift from him, was to be able to grow me a little bit as a man, And so as I think about how horrible that was, I kind of have that good thing to hang on to, And I know I didn't lose my son to a violent crime like my victim's family has, but still it gave me a little piece of what they suffered, which I thought I had it figured out until then.
Right.
I thought, I got this, and then it grew me as a man, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, the love of your children is pretty amazing, even if they're adopted children. I think it's the whole idea that you, because I have 3 adopted children, but even though you've raised them, right? You're raising them from when they're little, and you're protecting them, and you're trying to teach them and help them grow. And it's just, yeah, you're right. It is, can't even imagine losing one of my children.
It's because you make that choice. You chose to bring them into your life and love them. I mean, just the same as having them.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe it's the connection that's made too. It's not one-sided, because a child loves wholly and completely and unconditionally. They look up to you.
Good point. Yeah.
And I think it's a two-way street there. Yeah.
So I think that there's also a couple of other forms of what we would consider in this society love, and that is obviously love that we have for our friends. And then we had this really cool example. It just popped into my head, and I don't even know. I don't even know how to define it. But we know that a couple of weeks ago, one of our residents that has been here forever and ever has had reached a point with dementia where he wasn't even recognizing people that had been in his life for 20 years. And there was a moment where the staff really thought that they were going to have to physically control him to get him into a wheelchair and get him to the ambulance. And lo and behold, you bring Lady down.
Mm-hmm.
And everything changes. And to me, that is a love that we are still teaching every day in the dog program.
And so people know Lady is the dog
Right.
that's the resident dog here. That's
Our therapy dog.
therapy dog for the residents here. It's not training, not going out, not being adopted. She lives here, and she's lived here
Right.
for years.
And she has built those relationships with some of our guys that are never getting out. And sorry. It was so funny. I was telling my husband about this story and that we had published it. And he said, "Do you remember what you told me when you got her?" And I said, "No, what are you talking about? And he said, you said, this is what's going to be best for the facility. And I'm not asking for permission. I'm just doing it. And he
most
said,
of your career.
Well, yeah, that's most of my career. But he said, look at all of the happiness that she's brought to everybody. Whoops. And so I think I don't know how to define that. I don't know what kind of love that is, but I think that's another piece of what we have been able to bring to this facility. So apologize for the breakdown. I'll get back on board. It just put into perspective, just some of the vision that we all have kind of had and the opportunity that we have had to show love to people around us, and still provide dignity, even though somebody is incarcerated. And that went to show with how you guys dealt with John. And then the transport team that took him to counsel, that showed him love and care and concern and treated him like a human being. And so I just think that I don't even really know how this all encompasses love, but it does. And so anyway.
Having been right in the middle of all that, I feel like that story should be told a little bit for people to understand.
Go for it.
So we joke a lot about the 3 residents that we've had here. We called them the 3 kings. And then, so we had one, we had to send to medical, Ozzy.
In Boise.
To Boise, and then now John, and so we have Keith left. But for some of us, I've known them since 97. And so has my husband, who works here again. And these guys have too, but I had a relationship. I've known him for 25 years.
Same here.
Yeah. So, we get a call from an officer that's like, who cares about them as well, and says, Amy, I don't know what to do. He's not in a good place. He's going to throw his walker at one of us. He was that mad. He wanted to leave. And so I'm like, I'm on my way over. And so we were working on a plan before it kind of escalated. We have the response team on site now. He's agitated. I walked in. I thought, he's going to know who I am, right? Sees me and is mad, which he is never mad, right? And he's like, oh, you're here. I've got a bone to pick with you, and I, oh my gosh, just couldn't get him to calm down. Well, I had grabbed our program manager, Wendy, and said, look, will you help me? Because she has a good relationship with people. So she had to be the person that talked to him for a while. And so as we're dealing with this, we are talking to medical, like, what do we need to do? We got to get him to the hospital. We got to get him checked out. We do something that we never do in corrections, and we say to the response team, we need you to back out completely.
Because they were agitating him.
Yeah, just standing around. And
right.
And so we said, just go wait outside. And then eventually, because he kept seeing him, we're like, just leave. We'll just take care of it. And the whole time you're like, how do I get him in this wheelchair to the lobby for the ambulance to pick him up? I mean, that's what you're looking at. And so we spend a lot of time negotiating, starting to get him to where we need him. And then he goes back out, getting upset with different people if he sees someone. So medical comes in, and our AHSA, is that her title? Miss Shriver, amazing. It instantly connects with him, and because he's done with Wendy at this point. He's done with me. But he gets a little bit agitated with her, and I'm in my head, I'm like, I don't want to go hands-on, but I already have a plan if I have to. I'm just going to hug him from behind and hold on to him and get him in that chair. So in my head, I'm like, please don't, let's not do this, right? That's my biggest fear, because I didn't want to hurt him. So we were told he was angry with Keith, who's caretaker, and so we get him down to his room. We're doing well. He goes in his room, and I'm like, yes. Here's me radio that we had him isolated in there, and I was really quiet, and then he's mad at me again. So he decides he's going to come out, he's going to go to the bathroom, but he's going to go to where the stairs are at, the bathroom with the stairs, which he can't take. And so he's talking to Keith, and I'm thinking, he's mad at Keith. He's not going to listen, but luckily now he's okay with Keith. And so we keep going back and forth. Now, this is going on for a while, and you're trying to figure out, we haven't even called the ambulance because we don't even know how long we're going to be. And so we go back into medical. Miss Henson was the one that we're like, can you help? Can you talk him into doing something? And she's like, I wish I had my dog because he likes my dog. And I thought, that's great. So do you think Lady will help? And she's like, let's do it. And so she's the one that came up with the idea. And so we got Lady down there. And that actually did change the whole thing. Of course, Wendy cracked a couple jokes with him. We got him to go into the restroom. He used the restroom, came back out in the wheelchair with Keith by his side, with the dog. And we just told Amanda, take him straight through. Just go straight to the lobby. Don't stop. We'll go out through, which is a no-no, right? Go right through the control area and go to the lobby and just wait. We'll have the ambulance come through because that's the big obstacle. And then we have the ambulance running.
And Keith and Lady went with him.
Yep, they walked. We should probably get on those cameras to get a picture of it because Amanda's pushing him and Keith and Lady are walking by his side. And Wendy and I are hiding because if he sees us, he's angry. And so we're hiding behind the doors until it's clear. So we get him to the lobby, and now we're like, how are we going to get him on the stretcher without fighting, you know? And so we're actually discussing how we're going to pick him up, just if he refuses, if we can't convince him. So we decided to call case manager Anderson. He's known him forever. He doesn't even have a clue what's going on. So we're like, as soon as he walks out, we're like, we need you to convince him to go in the ambulance and go with him because we know he'll listen and you have background in security. And without really much information, he had convinced him already, like very quickly. But Lady was there the entire time. So every time he'd start to get agitated, Lady would see something outside and whine or make a noise and call his attention back, and it would stop that momentum of being angry. And so it's an amazing story, but I can tell you that staff, myself included, that was a rough day because never in my career did I think that was a challenge I was going to have. And I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared for him to leave, at least with Ozzy, because that hit us hard.
Yeah.
We got very emotional with that one. We had a little time. We had a little bit of a window to say goodbye and spend some time with him. But with John, it literally was hospital and then straight to Boise. And so we didn't even get to say goodbye. And I did stop in the hospital to talk to him really quick, but he was sleeping by then. So I didn't get to say that. And so I know for me, it took me a little bit to get over that. I still struggle with it, but I don't.
We're talking, which is kind of funny that we get to this point in the conversation about love. And that is, who would have known that we would have developed that kind of a relationship and that kind of a care and a love, as correctional professionals with a resident. That's just not something we teach, right? And so for me, it goes along with the same vision that I have, and that is that we are a community and we need to care about each other as a community. That in no way, shape, or form means we don't hold people accountable for poor behavior, right? It just means that we care about each other, we show respect, give dignity, and that goes both ways. And so, in a sense, it's another form of love.
Yeah, I hear
ambient affection.
I hear a lot of love in this story.
Absolutely.
You know? I hear love of, a love that's built over time. Mm-hmm. You know, you start to care for somebody. Whether it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. If you start spending enough time with somebody and you start respecting them and caring about them as a person, that's love. And then the love that John had for Lady, that's just as real as any other love.
Mm-hmm.
And
I could speak for myself that 5 years ago when I showed up here, I really had no guidance as far as love or respect for anybody. I was still so new to the environment that I was so sheltered and to myself and quiet and collective, and I had 1,000 things going through my mind. And when I first met these three, I walked into a room and there's the three of them, Craig, Lieutenant Craig, and Miss Gebhardt, my case manager, and That day it changed my life. The way that I thought about things. I didn't care for anybody. I didn't care for myself. I didn't really know what to do with myself at that point. And I think that moment I was at a crossroads of whether I was going to make it or break it. That was going to be where my life was going to, where it was going to go. And I spoke to them, and, you know, Miss Anderson, she's playing bad cop looking at me. And I had, you know, Carlin, and she's
Who's
talking.
the mom?
Yeah.
She's all oh my gosh.
You know, she's talking to me, and I got Shriver, you know, he's just kind of.
Who's that guy?
Yeah,
on,
who's
his,
that guy?
on his phone.
Finally remembered my
Just
name.
please remember my name.
Yeah.
So I just have to tell you, Joe, I got so much shit after your hearing because that's exactly what they said. You're being a mom to him. And I'm like, no, I see potential. And look at where you're at today.
Yeah.
You see, Joe touched on something, and that's self-love, which is
Yes,
another
yeah,
kind of love.
absolutely.
And he was saying that he kind of touched on the fact that he didn't even love himself, you know. And I think that's
Does our
important.
culture allow us to love ourselves?
no,
No.
absolutely not. Especially this prison culture.
Across the board, I don't believe that our culture, the United States, allows for self-love.
Yeah.
There are people that have a lot of self-love. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but even a healthy home, which I don't think there's a 100% healthy home. There's dysfunction everywhere. We're human beings. If you love yourself and you care about yourself and you set boundaries, too many people think that that's being arrogant or bitchy.
Right.
But the truth is you can't love others if you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
It's the old analogy of if you're on a flight, it's going to go down and you need the oxygen. Who do you give oxygen to first? Yourself, right? So then you can save others. It's the same thing. You have to learn how to love yourself. So Dave, yeah, kudos. You're absolutely right. And that's where Joe was at a crossroads. Is it okay for me to care for myself?
Yeah. Care enough to do the hard thing.
Yeah.
Care enough to
Yeah.
step away from all the stereotypes and all the,
Yep.
you know, convict mentality to do what you need to do for yourself so that you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
In the same aspects, I was given a environment to allow that. You know, I was given the opportunity and the support to feel that way. And, you know, I'm forever grateful, and I still continue to strive. And, you know, I tend to look at these three people as, you know, they care for every single one of us here. And they take pride in what they do, and they move mountains. And I don't think a lot of people see that. And so I'm forever grateful for you guys, and thank you. You know?
Maybe love is like a relay race, you know?
Oh,
Maybe we just pass it and
Pass it on.
let
Pass
it go,
it on.
let it go, let it
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm hearing as well is it's okay to love someone, but set that boundary where sometimes they just can't be in your life, which is really tough to have that division or that barrier, because, you know, I know there's people in my life that I love them, but I had to make a choice to kind of separate myself a little bit because of what it was doing, like that stress that it brought to my life. And it doesn't mean I don't care about them. I just,
Right.
and those are lessons you have to teach your kids, I think, as well. I mean, my two boys they have big hearts. They definitely are people that take in strays all the time. And I have to tell them, you guys have got to, they're open with just about anybody, but I see them get hurt. My oldest is learning some really good boundaries, though, and I'm proud of him for that. But it's hard because some of those are friends that he grew up with, and he has to set that boundary. And he doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but he's like, you know, that's not good for me anymore.
Yeah.
So, but that's tough. Like she said, it's not okay to love yourself enough to set that boundary,
Right.
because then we're the bad guy.
but that's something that self-love is something that we may not call it self-love, but when you're going through some of those cognitive behavior groups, we're still teaching you about setting boundaries, and that's learning to love yourself above and beyond other people's bad behavior.
And those people with the bad behavior call it being selfish.
Right.
And so then you have to contend with that and decide, okay, do I move forward with learning this new boundary, or do I just go, okay, I'll do this.
Yeah.
I'll whatever you say.
And I think, like for me, when I was going through the change,
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
menopause. I see.
Menopause.
more than one
Menopause.
different kind of change. Yeah.
We got some stories to tell.
There's like a fine line where you get to a point to where you want to change, but it involves pain. It involves doing something that's not very comfortable. You know, you got to do some uncomfortable things or go to uncomfortable places, and you do it because you care, because you love, you know, I guess just in general, you know, you want people to be happy and okay. You want my victims, I want to somehow make it right for them, or I don't want to create any more victims because I have a love for people now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get to that tipping point to where you're willing to hurt, you're willing to go through uncomfortable things because you care enough about yourself and the world around you that you can, you know, that you can grow.
Right.
I have a great example. This week, Fluff called me, and I hadn't had a chance to talk to him at all. He had talked to these two a couple of times, but we finally connected on the phone. And he was telling me that, and to me, it was meant to happen. So he's working at this doggy daycare training facility, and his sister comes in and drops off her dog, and she doesn't even recognize him. So he's like, "Have a nice day, Becky," and then goes on. She still doesn't recognize him. So she comes back in a second time at some point later down the road, and the owner of the business says, "Oh, well, your brother's working here." And so that's how they reconnected. And what he said was, he had to have a really tough conversation, which was, do you want to even rebuild a relationship with me? Because I will respect whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then when she said yes, they've had to have several visits and talk about the really dirty things, the things that hurt, right? And Fluff has to admit to his discretions and what he's done and how he's damaged the people around him. And she's been very honest with him. And so that's why I love your comparison to, you know, sometimes love is painful.
Yeah.
But in the end, that love will be stronger than it ever was, so long as they continue to be willing to trust the process, and to be honest with each other. So yeah, that's another form of love.
Yeah. I don't think there's any promises that love won't hurt, you know?
Absolutely.
I don't think that's a truth in life.
Right.
know?
So one of the things we didn't really get into, but I just want to sort of address it. And one of the questions was, this topic can be rough to talk about both as residents and as men. And I just want to clarify, it's not just men. It's people in general that have a hard time talking about love.
Yeah.
And so it is not a gender issue, because I was not raised with a loving mom that taught me how to be loving. I always knew she loved me, but she wasn't loving. And so I just kind of wanted to clarify that. And then one thing we didn't really address was romantic love.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we need to, not so much in the form of romantic love between residents. That's not what I want to talk about. Or romantic love between staff and residents, because that's illegal. But let's talk about
Legal love. Let's talk about legal love.
legal romantic love. For those of you that have been incarcerated, is that something that can really be a pro-social thing to have while you're incarcerated?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it can, but I also believe that it can take a turn for the worst really quick if those boundaries aren't established in the beginning. because a person can take any type of affection and cling to it. Because a lot of us, I believe, are codependent in a way. You know what I mean? We all want to be loved, cared for, attention. And it's just a fine line that we all have to worry about, because a lot of us can go this way and she's going this way, and it's like it just doesn't work.
So one of the things that I see throughout my career is this, like you said, codependent, this need to connect, right? And you start out with pen pals and you're instantly in love, but you've never met the person. You might have seen him on a video now, but never in the past did you have that. And it's true love. Like, you're going to get out and you're going to get married. And now they have TV shows about it, which my husband likes to watch, and it drives me nuts. But it's kind of funny, because then this guy who has given up his whole life is going to meet up with the gal that's getting out of prison, but then the other dude just showed up and picked her up, and now there's a fight. It's crazy. God. Anyway, but that to me is not healthy. That's not a healthy love when you fall in love with your pen pal or someone you only talk to on the phone or in letters, but that's the person you're going to marry. But you can't even, like, how do you know that's going to work for you?
I believe that people fall in love with the idea. You know,
is that what it is? They're in love with the idea?
It's the idea that, you know, you're going to get out, you're going to meet this girl, she's going to be everything you ever thought of.
Your support system?
You know, she's going to take care of you. You know, she's promised you all these things, and you've promised her all these things, and you guys are going to ride off into the sunset, and everything's going to be all right. But when it all comes down to it, I believe that person is in just as much codependent as you are, if not more. Seeking a type of relationship with a person that you've never met is pretty risky for anybody.
Right.
I think things changed with JPay, with us being able to email, because now we can sit and have a conversation with somebody and
you
talk for hours and hours
buddy.
and hours, you know. But yeah, if it wasn't for JPay, I would have never even, you know what I mean. Before that, it was never even an option for me. And then, but if you're able to sit and talk to somebody for hours and hours at a time, back and forth in conversation, you could feel like you know somebody and start to build a bond and a relationship.
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, you know, I'm like I said, I'm seeing board here soon, and I'm getting out, and I'm going to have to navigate a real relationship in the real world and try to figure out how to love and how to love correctly and how to love in a positive way,
right?
You know, and so it's something new. I've been in prison for 20 years now, and everything's changed out there.
So you have a good point with that, is texting back and forth or talking on the phone from time to time. It's hard to build a real good relationship with that if you're not around the person.
Yeah.
It's totally different when you're around that person all the time.
And how do you know if it's real stuff they're telling you?
Right. Are they just saying because they think you want to hear it? It isn't until you're actually with them and, you know, out there that you'll see whether they're true about that. And they're going to see the same thing about you, because you're going to be doing the same things. Is this what they want to hear? You know, so it is totally different than actually being in a relationship.
So you probably will hate to hear what I have to say, which is my personal opinion is try not to get romantically involved with somebody. You can build a really great friendship and get to know somebody, and then explore that when you get out. And I'm just going to tell you from experience, Dave and Joe and everybody else in the room, I just passed 26 years. We just had our anniversary for 26 years. And you still struggle in that relationship, because we actually started dating at 16. And so it's never easy peasy, as they say.
Right.
You always have to work on that relationship. And when not both of those individuals are working on that relationship, things can happen. And so it's a constant desire to make sure that you're working on it. I find it difficult for people to build a functional relationship while they're incarcerated with somebody on a romantic level. I don't think you can ever get to a certain point in that romantic relationship that's really going to test things while you're incarcerated. But I encourage building those relationships. appropriate relationships while you're incarcerated, because you might meet that person that's going to be a resource for the rest of your life. Respect and dignity is kind of what needs to be one of those boundaries, though.
Yeah.
I think the underlying message is we can overcome what our environment or maybe our culture taught us or ingrained in us, so that we can be better. And we can learn how to love appropriately. It's whether or not you're going to listen to the lessons and be willing to be vulnerable, because you got to be vulnerable when there's love around, and nobody likes that word, but it's true. And so you got to be open a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm trying to think. You have not been talking very much.
No, I really wanted to bring out the fact that, like with Amy and I, we're friends, and we have that type of love to hate each other relationship. It works well for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
But we didn't always get along.
Like earlier today, we weren't getting along.
In the early years. I mean, because he was Mr. Like, I'm going places and hanging out with the wrong supervisors. And we were like, ugh, who is this guy? But then our careers have just been crazy. As like at one point he supervised me and then I supervised him. So we learned some respect for each other. And so we're comfortable saying we hate each other too.
And then from down the hall, I hear, Draymond, won't get out of my space.
Needs to stay out of.
Yeah. No, that is definitely one thing that we are not lacking in our administrative office is a huge love for each other and care and compassion. And I'm hoping that it's contagious, and that's why we're starting to see that.
It's either annoying or contagious, because you never know. I wonder sometimes.
Some contagious viruses are annoying.
That's a good point. Good point.
Well, what about respect? Because it sounds like there's a respect there, you know?
I don't think you can have love without
love
respect.
and respect, yes. That's like peaches and cream or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I respect
Peaches and
that
cream.
Kent is in
Now I'm hungry.
operations and I never have to do it. No, it is. There's a lot of respect, and I think that helps us make decisions differently than most facilities might, so that we're all on the same page, and we take each other's views into consideration, our opinions.
Right.
So
I think when you have love for someone, just a love for them as a human being, you can empathize with whatever situation they're in that moment so much better than if you just see them as an object. And so while love could be talking about love could be considered taboo, people forget that it's not just romantic love.
Right.
It's a love of humanity. It's love of, sometimes it's love of a hobby. There's things that you have an opportunity to learn when you're incarcerated that you may not have been able to before. I don't think Belle's in here, but would Belle have ever known just how artistic he was had he not been incarcerated?
Yeah.
Just because you don't, when you're out there running and gunning, you don't explore that side of your brain.
Yeah.
And so their passion and love can also be kind of rolled up into that as well.
Yeah, passion is a big part of love. Can be, you know. Well, it might be necessary, you know, to some extent.
Well, I appreciate everybody being here today and talking about this interesting topic that's hard for a lot of us to talk about.
Apparently, we're closing down.
So we're done now.
Time's up.
Time's
You guys have
up?
talked way too much, so we are done. Thank you.
Listen,
Joe,
I am in charge of
Dave,
this.
I appreciate you guys being here today and helping us out with this. She's controlling the podcast again.